Island Democrats have decided that it's a great idea to promote a right-winger, a conservative, rather than endorse the progressive candidate running for state senate in the state of Rhode Island. Now, if you've been following corporate Democrats and the nonsense they usually engage in, this isn't a surprising story to you, but it does give you a specific example of why the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, including progressive voters, are so furious with the mainstream Democratic Party because they've made it abundantly clear that they would rather support corporate and even conservative, even right-wingers before they assist, help, endorse a progressive candidate for local races, for federal races. Let's get to the details of this particular case. It involves a progressive by the name of Jennifer Rourke. As I mentioned earlier, she's running for state senate in Rhode Island. But since she's a progressive, the Democratic Party within that state has decided to endorse someone else. There she is, she's a wonderful candidate who wants universal health care. She wants a Green New Deal. She wants to raise the minimum wage in the state of Rhode Island to $19 an hour. Sounds pretty fantastic to me. But corrupt Democrats don't want that because those funding them don't want to, pay a little more for their workers. They don't want higher wages. They don't want to enact progressive policies that might, maybe mess with their bottom line a little too much. So they fund corporate Democrats, and in turn, corporate Democrats do whatever they can to just crush progressive candidates like Jennifer Rourke. Now, if her name sounds familiar to you, there's a reason for that. So she had a political opponent, a Republican running against her in this race, who did something pretty terrible, something violent, and he had to drop out. Jeann Lugo, an off-duty cop running for state office as a Republican, this was caught on camera, punched Rourke in the face twice and was charged with assault and disorderly conduct. Doesn't look good for you when you're running a campaign. Lugo actually went on to drop out of the race, as did Senate Majority Leader Michael McCaffrey, who's the conservative Democrat incumbent that Rourke was challenging. And I say that she was challenging him because he ended up dropping out of the race as well. Now, guess what happened next? This is where things get good. And again, this is a perfect example of what you can expect from corporate Democrats when they're being challenged by a progressive. Rhode Island Democratic Party leaders helped another conservative Democrat get on the ballot to run against Rourke in the 29th Senate district race. Rourke is now facing a challenge from Michael Carreiro, who wore blackface and appears to be a fan of Tucker Carlson. There he is with the blackface. He even posted this on Facebook, and so it was pretty easy to get that screenshot. He was allegedly dressed as James Brown, but there are other issues with this individual. And there are certainly bigger issues when you have a mainstream Democratic Party knowing about these issues and deciding to endorse him, promote him, and do whatever they can to get him elected, instead of a progressive who wants to do right by hardworking individuals, workers in that state. Let me give you more details. So this guy, Carreiro, also appeared to have liked a Facebook page called Support Officer Darren Wilson, referring to the police officer who shot and killed Michael Brown in 2014, and the show page of Tucker Carlson Tonight. Well, I mean, look, on Twitter, I follow a whole bunch of unsavory individuals. It doesn't mean that I'm promoting them or endorsing them. It's part of my job, keep an eye on what they're doing. Doesn't mean that I like them, right? So you might make that case when it comes to the pages that this conservative Democrat liked on Facebook, except there's more to the story. Apparently there's also a photo on his Facebook page that features himself with Tucker Carlson smiling, all chummy and buddy-buddy. Now, Michael McCaffrey, who's the incumbent, the conservative Democratic incumbent that Rourke was challenging, signed an affidavit swearing that he collected signatures for Carreiro. At least 5 members of McCaffrey's family signed his nomination papers to get him on the ballot, okay? McCaffrey also has an A rating from the NRA. Just to give you a sense of how conservative he is, he's also fought against legislative efforts to codify Roe v. Wade. He also was previously endorsed by the Rhode Island Right to Life, meaning an organization that is against allowing women to make decisions about their own bodies. They purport to be in favor of life, but let's be brutally honest about how deceptive that is, considering how they treat people the second they're out of the womb and don't have the means to, pay for basic necessities like food, shelter, clothing, things like that. That's when the bootstraps come in. That's when life is secondary. But moving on, let's talk a little more about what's going on. McCaffrey also has an A rating from the NRA, fought against the legislative efforts to codify Roe v. Wade, terrible guy. And he's the one who decided, well, let's get another conservative Democrat to run against Rourke, because we can't have Rourke. Rourke is a progressive. Rourke is someone who wants to ensure that workers are getting paid a livable wage. We can't have that. Our corporate donors, they don't like that. They don't like that. All right, so what do we do to defeat her? Well, not only did the state's Democratic Party get involved, they got him on the ballot, right? And they knew that the blackface incident happened. They saw the picture, but they decided to endorse him anyway. He doesn't even have a campaign website. He doesn't have a policy agenda. All they know is that this is a conservative Democrat who's gonna play ball with what we want, which is carrying out the best interests of our corporate donors. And Jennifer Rourke said it perfectly. She says the fact that the Democratic Party leadership would rather work with the guy who wore blackface against me, a black and brown progressive working class candidate running for office, was very disappointing. But it also shows that they are not real Democrats. I would disagree with that. Currently, this is what the Democratic Party overwhelmingly represents, but let me continue. That they'd rather dig their heels in and protect their own power than support a candidate like me get elected and improve the lives of working people everywhere. That last part is definitely true. They don't have an incentive to improve the lives of working people everywhere. They have an incentive to listen to what their donors want, and their donors want to crush progressives. They want to assist their corporate donors to crush workers, and they don't want a better state. They don't want a better life for people, because that means it would cut into their profits. Now, let's talk about those corporate donors just briefly. Between April 1st and June 30th of 2018, for instance, the Rhode Island Democratic State Committee took in $566,762, which, look, doesn't sound like a lot, especially when we talk about federal elections. But in the context of politics in Rhode Island, it is far more than the $41,800 it raised in the first 3 months of that year, or at this point in any other recent election cycles. In 2014, for example, the last time statewide office holders were on the ballot, the Democratic Committee raised $10,585 in the second quarter. Now look, those numbers would be totally fine if we're talking about the average voter making small dollar donations to the Democratic Party, but that is not what's happening. Who are the donors? Well, donors include high profile names like former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg and super lawyer David Bowies. Who is that guy? Who's that David Bowies guy? Well, I looked into him, and in 2017, his law firm directed the Israeli private intelligence company Black Cube to spy on the victims of Harvey Weinstein to find any dirt they can use to discredit Weinstein's accusers. That's what he was involved in. What else? Oh, that's right. He also personally signed the contract directing Black Cube to attempt to uncover information about Harvey Weinstein's victims. So for anyone who says, well, it was his law firm, doesn't mean it was him personally. No. He personally signed the contract directing Black Cube to do that. And then, by the way, months after Cyrus Vance Jr. dropped an investigation into a sexual assault allegation against Weinstein, he received a massive donation, a $10,000 donation from Bowies. Weird how that works. It's almost like there's a transactional thing happening here, both when it comes to our criminal justice system in the case of Harvey Weinstein, of course, but more importantly and on a broader scale throughout this country, you see that transaction happen between the corporate world with money flowing into our public servants, and that money does what? We know what it does. It persuades these public servants to serve the corporate donors and work against everyday, hardworking Americans who are just trying to get by. That is what's happening in Rhode Island. That corporate influence has destroyed the Democratic Party. When you see the Democratic Party move further and further away from representing the best interests of working Americans, understand there is a reason for that. And that reason has a lot to do with corporate greed and with unlimited campaign donations.